Okay, so the project that we're working on today, or we're starting on today, it's going to take a little bit, is this. It's the family tractor. It is a Ford 9N. Forget exactly what year. I'd have to look at the serial number again. I knew at one point. It was late 9N. It was like 200 tractors later, it would have been a 2N. It's probably been about 6 or 7 years since it ran last. But even then, it didn't run well. It would start up, but you had to manually choke the carburetor. And it had no power. Third gear was useless, stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get it to my garage and fix it completely and correctly this time so that it's proper. So the first step of that is getting it from where it's been sitting. I came through here yesterday and mowed the area. We took the strange bucket off the back. Then we have to get it on my trailer, and my winch decided to die. So we're improvising that, and we're just alternating two of my car hauler straps. Essentially, I pull this one. Once that one's tight, I pull that one. Then I reset, pull this one, pull that one. It's working real slowly, about 4 or 5 inches at a time. But it'll get up there, and we'll get it back to the garage, and we'll start working on it. So we've gotten the tractor here to the garage. I've only done a couple of things off camera. I pulled all 4 spark plugs out and just put a little bit of oil in the cylinder. It's been sitting for a very long time. And I'd like to have a little bit of oil in there before I try spinning anything over. And I took the battery out and I have it on the charger just to see if it actually has any life left in it. I'm not real hopeful for that, but it's on there. But that's as far as I've gotten so far. I'm going to want to check out a lot of this stuff in the engine area. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pull this hood completely right off of there, just so I have a lot more access to it. And once I do that, I'll try to position the camera so you can see it a little bit better. I don't remember exactly how they come off. I don't think there's much that holds it. There's some aftermarket headlights that have to come off of here. Factory ones would too. But I know there's some bolts up here by the steering wheel. And I want to say there's a couple down in the very front too. I don't think there's much there though. So I'll get started on that and see what we can do. Mine has the air cleaner that comes out through the top. So I have to pull that cap off, which should just pops off. Set that aside. Yeah, all these bolts behind the steering wheel, they're just flat on the side you can see from the driver's seat. But there's 1/2-inch nuts on them. So I'm removing those right now. They're a little stubborn. Yeah, who would have thought? Old tractor like that. But old tractor's best friend, WD-40. Okay, these bolts actually don't have anything on the head that will hold them. And that one down there decided to spin, so it has chosen death. So yeah, they're carriage bolts with the square heads. Well, they're flat, but they have a square underneath it to hold them from spinning. Well, that bolt is still being stubborn over there at the front. Can't be tight if it's liquid. I've unhooked the wires for my headlights. I got all the bolts up there by the steering wheel, and there's 2 on each side down at the bottom here. The hood shakes around quite a bit. I'm pretty sure that's all of them. If not, I guess I'll get back to that. I know I have to remove the radiator cap, so I'll take that off and set it aside. Actually, one more important thing I do have to do is I have to take the gas line off, because the gas tank is hooked to the bottom of this hood. And I know I've called out a couple of these sizes as I was doing them. Honestly, you can probably disregard those though, because these are 70 something. They're very old tractors, so a lot of bolts could have very well been replaced. So if I tell you it's a 1/2 inch, it doesn't mean yours will be if you have a similar tractor. Alright, so my fuel line is unhooked. There's no other wires. That cap is off. I took the breather cap off. So it should move at this point. I can tell from up there it's going to have to lift up in the front and then slide towards the steering wheel a little bit. And from there we're just going to improvise. Okay, so as you can see, the hood is off. No big deal, 30-second job. No, it took us a long time, and when we finally got it, the camera wasn't rolling. But it was just, there was brackets down here. They're just flat little plates. I had to unbolt them from here and from the hood to give it the movement. And then there's little carriage bolts here and the fuel line. And that leaves us with what we're looking at here, the engine. You can kind of see better too how these are sort of built, where it's the drivetrain is the frame, engine, trans, and rear axle all sort of in one. We also found the mouse nest.
No mousies.
I have a rag jammed in there just I didn't want to drop too much into the radiator. And then as far as what I've done so far, remember I said off camera I had removed the spark plugs and just put some oil down in the cylinder there. I'm going to get some of that mouse nest cleaned off of here, and then I guess I'll see if it cranks over at all, or if it spins at least. Alright, so I got the mouse nest out of here, and then I can't really get the camera in here for you to see, but just using the cooling fan, I can spin the motor by hand. The plugs are out, so that makes it a lot easier, but it feels actually pretty smooth, so that's good news. I put the battery back in it. It's not testing great for voltage, but it's just under 12. It should start this thing just fine. I do have the 12-volt conversion too, so probably the worst kit possible. Not the 12-volt conversion, but this exact one on here it's pretty janky. I'll probably do something about that at some point, but it'll be fine for what we're doing. So I have the battery in it, so we're going to make sure it's in neutral and try to crank it. Alrighty, I don't even know if the camera is going to be able to pick that up. It's seemingly very quiet. The starter is spinning, but it's not engaging. I might have to pull that and clean up some stuff. The other option is it might be too low on voltage. This battery isn't very good. So I'm going to swap that out for a different one and see if it cranks any different. Okay, we just needed more voltage. So that battery's garbage. I guess we're getting a new battery. That's okay. That one was free like 5 years ago. So for testing purposes, I'm just going to leave this here, and I'll give it a little bit of a crank now and just see how it sounds.
Honestly, it sounds
Seems smooth enough. Like I said, plugs are out of it right now. I guess since the plugs are out of it right now, so let's do a compression test as soon as I find my tester.
Ooh.
Alrighty, so we tried to look up the specs on this. I should just get an actual manual of some sort. And it gave me various things depending on what sea level was. Ultimately, the best I got is it should be somewhere between 56 and 90 minimum. It's not very specific, I know. Let's just see what we get. Cylinder 1 has about 110.
Sorry, that was funny.
Which is my understanding, I'm pretty sure that's really good for one of these. Hopefully they all are somewhat close to that. Cylinder 2. Yeah.
115 if they're...
Yeah, 110, 115, somewhere around there. See, I learned. I held it away from my face. I know the camera didn't see that, but it sprayed a whole bunch of dust out at me on cylinder 1. But very close to cylinder 1. Cylinder 2 is good. Going to cylinder 3 now. Go ahead.
Oh boy.
A little over 120.
Yeah, goodness. There's 4 cylinders here.
they were brand new, they had a whopping 23 horsepower.
Whoa,
Whopping.
that's impressive. Gotta be careful, it's dangerous.
The log splitter that plants the corn. Go ahead. Our battery is dying. Although we were pretty much at 110 already. It'll probably go a hair higher if we crank it. But we have good compression. What else we need, Emily?
Spark.
Right, we need spark.
I learned it today. Oh, I know these things. Brushing up.
We're going to use the old spark plugs first. If we don't have spark on one or all of them, we'll try the new ones, but I don't want to get the new ones out yet.
Just pop one of these.
Yep. Since we're just testing if we have spark, it doesn't really matter where we put them. I should probably put new plug wires on it too, because I know for a fact that these are at least from 1990, possibly older. They're very brittle feeling.
1990, that's as old as me.
Okay. Now the first time I hit this button, you should not see spark. No spark?
I didn't see any spark on any of them.
So if we add some ignition power,
Still not seeing any
still
spark.
don't have any? Okay. So we don't have spark.
Nope.
So let's look around at what we have here. Time for some really super advanced test equipment.
Ooh.
A test light. Now, once again, I apologize. I can't really get you in the camera in here.
I'm going to put my phone in here. If you want.
But the coil on these is mounted right to the top of the distributor. The year that this one is, it's a front mount distributor. It's all right here. It's hiding behind the radiator from you guys. But on the very top, there is a terminal. And if I hook my test light to that and to negative,
That's going to hold it for you.
and I turn the key, well, or in this case, I have a toggle switch. Turn that on. Okay, so I'm kind of just going to point at it a little bit. Right here, I have an alternator. If you still have the 6-volt system, which is what all of these came with, it would be a longer generator. But anyways, where my hand is right here is the coil. Right below it is the distributor. Everything for the ignition system basically is contained within this unit. I could potentially do it right there on the tractor, but I'm going to find it to be a lot easier if I just remove that entire assembly and take it to my bench. I can clean it a lot better, and I can get a lot better look at everything too. So I believe it's held on just with 2 bolts. You know, a slight revision to what I said. I'm going to take some of it apart while I'm right here, because I do want to know which direction the rotor is facing right now. I believe these just have a slot on the back, so it can either be one way or exactly 180 from it. But I do want to know that. It's good practice to label your spark plug wires so you know where they go. On this side here, I can just unplug them pretty safely. One of them's not long enough to reach the bottom. I'll go look at the other side and see if it's the same. And yeah, this side is the same. There's a nut on top of there. It's probably a 5/16, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to do blasphemous stuff, and I'm going to use an 8mm instead.
Shame on you.
Henry Ford's going to haunt me for that, but so there's only one small gauge wire that hooks to it. I have that off now. There's a little wire bail on top. Swing that forward. The coil does have a little bit of a spring in it, so watch out for that. Let's see how well I can actually get that up there. That's what the bottom of the coil looks like. This spring right here kind of fights you a little bit as it goes there. We'll just set that aside for now. Then down below it we have the distributor cap. There's just two little wire clips that kind of grab the cap. So you pop each of those off and the cap should come off. Here's what your cap looks like. There is contacts in here you got to make sure are clean. Mine are pretty corroded, which makes complete sense considering how old it was and how it's just kind of been sitting there. Oh, that's convenient. My cap actually has numbered for the cylinders too. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm also saying it, for my own benefit later in case I forget, that the rotor for the distributor is currently pointed up. Remember I said it would either be up, but I could also install it wrong and be pointed down, and that's going to cause all sorts of trouble. So it is pointed up. Now there's these two bolts that hold it to the engine, and I'm going to go ahead and pull those. They're either 1/2 inch or 9/16 on mine. I can't tell because there's so much dirt and whatever down here. Well, I'm going with 1/2 inch. Mine are 1/2 inch. Yours may differ. Okay, bolts are out. I expected that to fight me, and it did not at all. Okay. So here's the rest of the distributor. So we're going to get into here now as soon as I clear off my bench.
But yeah, it's hot.
The rotors just pop off. There's this little dust cover, basically some cardboardy stuff. And then in here, we have our point system. You can't really see it on the camera, but right here, yeah, I'm not going to really be able to show it. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of videos on this. There's I can't remember the channel now. It's two names. I think their last name is Gingell or something. They do a real good breakdown on that. I'm just going to do this part here. It's a point system very similar to basically any distributor. So they have a good video. You can find other good ones. Alright, so another test that I'm running is just making sure that the spark plug wires are going where they're supposed to be going. And by pretty much, they go in this metal pipe up here, so I can't physically see them. So the way that I'm testing it is just with the continuity function of my multimeter. I have already tested a couple of them, and then I forgot the camera wasn't rolling. Cylinder 1 is going to cylinder 1 and has good continuity. Cylinder 2, I cannot get a reading on any wire for, so I definitely have a dead cylinder 2. Back when this thing was running last time, it was very low on power, so that's a good candidate for why. These aren't very strong tractors. They need all the help they can get. So now I'm hooked to the cylinder 3 wire over there. Go to the cylinder 3 plug, and my multimeter should be beeping right now. It's not. It's just giving me an ohm reading. So that tells me, at least for this one, that tells me this has a very high resistance in the wire. I don't know if I can. And I can't get any better. So cylinder 2 and 3 were probably pretty much dead cylinders. Now we'll check cylinder 4. And cylinder 4, I get continuity on again. So I have 4 cylinders here. I don't remember what these engines are rated for torque-wise, but I do know that they're only 23 horsepower. And that was back in the 40s. I'm sure it's probably not that anyways. So I definitely need a new set of plug wires to go on here. And having 2 pretty much dead cylinders is absolutely the kind of stuff that's going to give me the low power that this thing had the last time it was driving. But I don't have spark at all right now on any of those cylinders. This doesn't use the actual ignition anymore. That went bad years ago. It has just a quick little toggle. So I'm going to put the battery back up to this and just bypass that toggle switch and see exactly where my power stops up here. And that will actually give me a better read. Or, actually, I lied. I don't have to do that. I have the continuity test. So, I'm going to find my wire over here that goes to the coil. That there. Looks like it's a brown wire. I don't know if it is when it comes out, too. It is a brown wire. I sort of have continuity here. Okay, the brown wire is good. And it looks like it plugs into the most half-assed wiring I've ever seen. I probably did it. You know, I may have just found a really simple issue that caused all of that. Basically, all those wires end up here at the resistor, and the little terminal that holds those all was loose. So, if the ignition system's working properly, I should be able to get continuity straight from this wire that goes to the coil all the way to the positive cable. Yeah, my whole problem there was probably that the terminal was loose. But whatever, I did go into the distributor there. Wasn't able to film it. And now I know that the insides of the distributor are good. The points were a little bit corroded. I was still able to get continuity with them. That's another thing I said. You check out the videos of, I want to say their last name was Gangel or something like that. They'll show you how to do that. So now I am going to put a battery back in it and see if I have spark now that that's tight. It's probably a better angle for everybody to see anyways. But now, with my toggle switch / key on, this should have power. Yep, that shows up on camera. I do have power there. So I'm going to go ahead and hook that up to the coil, and then we'll test it again to see what the points are up to. I still think we're going to have spark. Possibly only on 2 of the 4 cylinders. It is also possible that those 2 will still have spark because we're just out at atmosphere pressure. Higher air pressure creates higher electrical resistance. So even though they spark out here, they might not spark in the engine. Now I'm sure you won't be able to see the spark. You'll just have to take my word for it. But ignition on. I have spark on the 2 wires that had good continuity. I have no spark on cylinder 3, and I have sporadic spark on cylinder 2. 2 and 3 being the ones that I already knew the plug wires were bad on. So that's it's a pretty fair candidate for why this thing was low power. I'll see what I can do about getting some of those, and then I'll continue the video. Okay, so I believe the last thing we were doing there was I checked the spark plug wires. I started out just making sure they were routed correctly, which they absolutely should be, considering they're in a metal tube and all the holes come out in spots next to where they go. But I did so with a continuity tester. I checked it at the distributor and up at the cap where the spark plug goes, and I could only get an actual continuity, I guess a confirmation on it, saying it was good at cylinders 1 and 4. 2 and 3 were showing resistance sometimes if I wiggled the wires around a little bit. So I went ahead and bought new spark plug wires. The ones I bought are the ones from Tractor Supply. Get up here, I hope the camera can see it, should be able to. It's sort of a universal set. The important part, and once again, I'm hoping you can see this, but if you can't, this little corner here, it says copper core, and that's very important. An old tractor like this one here has a very weak ignition system, and it needs all the help it can get getting voltage from there up to the spark plugs. The copper core is a lot nicer. Modern ones a lot of times have little suppression systems in there, various resistor stuff, and you don't want that on an old tractor like this. I need to get it from there efficiently. Copper core does it. If I test these ones with my continuity tester, I absolutely get a beep no matter what I do with them. If you do that with a lot of modern ones, you actually won't get a beep at all. You can measure them for resistance, but it's such high resistance that it doesn't even register it there. But that's okay on a modern not even high performance, but much higher performance than what these do. So I've got these, and then I have to route them through that awesome metal pipe. It's kind of a pain, but it is what it is. We have to do it. So I'm going to get started. First, I'm just popping them all off of the distributor, pulling the insulators off of the distributor end. Now, I've seen some people say stuff about like hooking a wire up to it so you can pull it all through. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to try my best to pull them. Like the longest one pulls the easiest, so we'll start there. Ones are still having some trouble. Kind of help them along. Worst case scenario, if this ends up too difficult, you always could just run them next to it. But I mean, that's not the way Ford did it. It's not the way I'm going to do it. These wires actually have some spots where they don't even really want to flex that much. But they are super old. This tractor's been in my family since the late 80s, and I'm sure they haven't been replaced in that time. Late 80s, right around 1990, I guess. Actually, I bet that's one of my bad ones right there. There's an odd bulge spot right there. But it doesn't really matter which one's bad. I bought enough wires to do all of it. I just threw all those, but actually I need them to compare it to get the lengths for the new ones. That's okay. It was funny on camera, right?
It's funny to me.
The package I bought is a universal kit that does up to 6 cylinders. Essentially, they come with the spark plug boot already on it, and the other end is just basic there. So you can cut them to length from that end and then just put the extra fitting on there once we're at that. So I'm just kind of measuring them up. Those ones are pretty close, so I think I'm going to call that the replacement for that one. That one's actually too short for what I need. That one's going to have to work for that. I have to cut it down. It's plenty long enough. So we've got our lengths from there. Now I have to get these fed up into here. I think there's a mouse nest in there. And I'm thinking the best way to do this is I'm going to start with the longest one. And I ran it just up to where I can get to the second longest pole. I'm going to start feeding that one in now with it and running them in there together. Keep doing it just like that in the hopes that they'll all just move nicely together.
Your mouth is nice as the first batch we got.
anywhere that I can. They actually went in real nicely until the very end. One of them is starting to come out. It is cylinder 4. Okay, we have a second wire showing. That's cylinder 3. If I pull on the one there while I'm feeding the others, it kind of drags it along. Got another wire coming out, which is cylinder 2. And there's cylinder 1. Honestly, that was not as painful as I expected it to be. I'm trying to leave a little bit of extra wire out here in case in the future I might have trouble with these. I can snip it back and make a new connection. I don't expect it. These actually seem like pretty decent wires. Okay, so those are all the proper length there. Now we have to cut them down at the distributor wherever they are supposed to go. No real great trick to that. It is literally cut them. The important thing, though, to make sure that I have them right where they go before I cut them. And I think I said, with these ones, when they're working properly, I can do a continuity test. So, let's get this up into there. One of these is going to be. That was a good guess. It's this one. The other ones definitely shouldn't. And they do not. One more time, similar to you'll measure twice, cut once thing. This is cylinder 1. I hook to it here. And then that is the top on the distributor here, on the side that I'm standing on. We're going to run it into its bracket. Snip off the extra length. We're going to find wherever I put all the other parts. And we have these little, I believe they're brass ends that have to go on there. They are barbed on the inside so they can't pull off. Once they're on the wire, that will slide into the distributor. And then you have a rubber insulator for it too. The instructions that came with one don't actually specify to do this. But in the past, I usually always cut just a little bit off the end to expose the center wire, and I fold it over on itself. I find that gives me a much better connection. First thing to do is put the rubber insulator over the wire. You may need some lubricant in order to do that. I've set that down enough times that I'm going to recheck it and make sure I'm holding the right one. I am. Now it's marked because it has that on it. Okay. And like I said, it doesn't say to do this. I always have done it this way, and it's worked for me so far. So I'm going to keep doing it that way. Pretty much cut it to expose a little bit of the wire, fold it back around the insulation. Some people even solder it to this end piece. I don't go that far. Slide it into the distributor. Slide that insulator down over it. You will feel it lock into the distributor. If you don't, something's wrong. Make sure you figure out what. So cylinder 1 is completely intact on there. And I just do that with the rest of them now. So I've got the plug wires all installed, all the ends are on there. I'm going to put in the new spark plugs now, because I'm not actually going to put them into the cylinders. I want to see the spark first. The plugs I'm getting are Autolites, specifically Autolite 216. These are the correct spark plug for that machine. A lot of them, when you look them up at the store, are going to give you the Autolite, I think it's the 437s. They do fit. They're not the right plug, though. These are a non-resistor type. Those ones have a resistor, and it kind of goes back to I was telling you, these things need all the help they can get getting the spark to the cylinder. So the resistors aren't really something you want in there. Autolite 216s. When you switch up to some of the newer ones, they get a little bit more powerful, and those are fine. I don't have one of those. So, Autolite 216. I also gap them, I believe you're supposed to gap them at 25 thousandths, according to what I was reading. I like to gap them at 20 thousandths. It's a little bit smaller, it'll work just fine in there. The smaller gap is easier for the spark to jump, even if it doesn't quite have the voltage it needs. So just get yourself a feeler gauge. They sell it, if you're at an auto parts store, a lot of times on the counter there's a little disc one, those work just fine. I have the actual feeler gauges I use for everything. I have the 20 thousandths blade out right now. Plug, run it in there. It's a little bit big right now. Honestly, it's probably at that 25 thousandths. So I'm just going to gently bend this. You can do that by holding it against something and pushing. Sometimes you can grab it with pliers and kind of bend it in there, but just be careful. You don't want to destroy any of the stuff inside. So I've done that. I've closed it up a little bit. I have a little bit of a gentle drag on there. Not very much, though. If I was to let go of the plug, it probably would have fell. So it goes in there. Gentle drag is what you want. That one's at 20 thousandths. Just going to come up here and plug it into the cylinder one wire. And I'll go ahead and finish these out, and then I'll bring you guys back. Alrighty, and yeah, you're not zoomed in enough to see it, but I have them plugged all in here. I just put the battery, hook that back up to it. And just going to look at how the spark looks. Before, cylinder 1 and 4 sparked every time. It was kind of a dull orange spark. Ideally, you'd want it to be more of a blue. Cylinders 2 and 3 were kind of on and off spark. They were a very orange dull spark when they did as well. And actually, the plugs were foul. It wasn't even sparking to the electrode. It was kind of sparking into itself. So, as I crank it, I'm going to watch them. These are a nice blue spark, even kind of a white spark. It's a very good spark, though. I wish I had a spark tester. I used to have one. Essentially, what that is you hook it to a ground and you put a plug wire on it, and you can unscrew it and kind of make a gap to see how far it'll actually spark. Because if these can't jump a good 1/4 inch, ideally even 3/8 out in the air, they're not going to work in the engine because the compression creates electrical resistance. I'm going to try to figure out something, maybe just a screwdriver jammed up in there so I can kind of hold it away. Okay. That actually is working enough for me. Essentially, I have the screwdriver in the boot there, and as it's going there, it's probably jumping it when it gets to about 1/2 inch. I have some pretty good spark here. So I'm pretty confident in that ignition system, and it's going to work just fine. So at this point, I'm going to put the spark plugs in there. I know I have compression. I know I have spark. I'm going to hook up some sort of fuel system to it. I mean, first, I'm just going to spray some gas into the carburetor. Just see if it kind of pops off like it's supposed to. I'm going to put the plugs in there and work on the fuel system next. Everybody probably knows how spark plugs screw in there, so I'm not going to film that for you. But I'll come back to you when I'm ready for the fuel system. So I've tried to fill the carburetor. I don't have the fuel tank on it because it goes on the hood of it. So I don't have a fuel line to hook anything to. And it's a screw-in fitting, kind of like a 1/4 inch brake line, essentially. 7/16 by 24, I think it is. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what it is. So I put a line there and sort of just tried to fill the carburetor that way. And then we're going to try to start it. I'm a little worried that it's going to smoke out the garage real quick, but it's really hot outside, and I have the air conditioner going. So I'm going to do the right thing and just let it smoke us out. Make sure it's a neutral, which it should be. These aren't supposed to crank if they're not. There's a little lockout for it, but it's always a good idea to check anyways. Ignition is on. Everything to me says that this thing should probably fire up in a fairly short time. For the first time in however many years. It's definitely been years though. I would say at least 5. And it wasn't good then. So there you have it, folks. Buy a 9N.
Happy to be alive again.
I have not cleaned the carburetor, so apparently that's fine. It seemed like it idled fine. It revved up fine. It's blowing dust out of everywhere where it's been piling up for years.
Yes.
But all in all, that ran amazing. It's nice and smooth. It revved up instantly. So it's pretty happy with everything going there, and so am I. So I guess now we get to put that really annoying heavy hood back on it. I also have a tire over here I really desperately need to fix. I think I'm going to try my best to just leave that there and do a quick lap around the yard. There's a place nearby I found on Facebook Marketplace that has a good set of tires for cheap enough, but I don't want to buy them if the rest of the tractor isn't ready yet, because that's an easy fix. That's a replace a tire thing. And that's easy enough, but I want to know it runs first before I go and spend the money. And if it drives as good as it just ran right there, I don't think that's going to be a problem. So, I'm going to get the hood back on. I don't think I'm going to film it, because I'm going to be in your way all the time anyways, because you really got to finagle it in there just right. So yeah, I'll probably come back to you when that's back on. I'll also probably have the fuel line hooked up, because it's still currently hooked to the bottom of that with the gas tank. It's just a line that screws into the carburetor there. I'll bring you back probably right before I put the air cleaner back on. It's an oil bath system. Way outdated by today's standards. It's kind of neat to look at though. And I do need to service it anyways, especially because when I took it off, I set it up down, and basically my entire garage floor has dirty oil all over it now. So I'm sure it's empty. But I'll bring you back when it's time to put that back on. So we've got the hood back on it now. Now I'm going to get to that air cleaner I was telling you about. There's this wing nut screw on the bottom. We're going to unscrew that, and it's going to loosen up this clamp, and it should let me remove the bottom 4 inches or so of it. Just going to have to slide it out of the way. The bottom is not actually held in by anything physically now, it's just kind of a little stubborn. Give it some wiggles. And we'll pull it down. What I'm seeing here is pretty much a lot of evidence that there's been moisture in there. When oil mixes with water, a lot of people say it doesn't mix with water. It does. And it turns out like yellow goo, and that's about what I'm seeing in the bottom of this. There's a part in there I can take apart and clean. And I don't know if I can actually... Yeah, it's not actually going to let me grab it, but up in here, there's a tube that goes through there. Essentially, it sucks air in from here, comes through. It has to go through the oil that's in the bottom of this, and then as it goes up, there's like a really heavy mesh, almost like a steel wool. And as the air gets sucked past that with the oil coats all of that stuff, and it catches the dirt and sort of sticks to it. When you shut it off, it all runs back down into this bottom part here. And it kind of collects everything. So you clean out the bottom part there, put a little bit more oil back in here, and then you put it right back up there. All right, I've cleaned it out. Just going to put some oil in it now. It's essentially a ring in the bottom of it. I can't show it because I filled it before I went to show it to you. But I fill it to the ring. It's basically where the edge is on the outside. There's a dimple in the middle of it that sticks up right about to that point too. You're supposed to fill it with whatever oil you're using in the engine. I have it filled with 1540 Rotella. That is what I operate in this tractor. And it goes back up onto here. Clamp back over it. And tighten up the clamp. Okay, air filter is ready to go. I do have to loosen up the boot and actually hook that back into the carburetor. Then that tire over there is really bad, but I'm going to probably try to fill it, and it'll probably hold air long enough to just take it for a quick spin around the yard and see if I got the power back like it's supposed to have. It's really not going to hold itself very well here, and that's actually my fault from years ago, because the rubber boot that's on here is just a plumbing fitting. It's never actually meant for use with gas. Kind of one of those things that was supposed to be a temporary fix that I never actually fixed. Every time I tell myself I'm going to do that, I know better, but do it anyway. And actually, it worked while we were using the tractor. But after it sat there for a while, it's all swelled up and stuff now. So I moved the clamp over to a spot, brought the swelling back in. It'll work for now. Still got to hook my fuel line up. Actually, before I hook my fuel line up, I'm going to turn it on and drain it into something a little bit. There's not much gas in there, but I know what's in the sediment bowl is disgusting, and I don't want it in my engine. There's probably very little gas in it. If I know me, I probably parked it dry.
I'm sorry, on my shorts. How did I do that?
That tank is absolutely dry. So,
Honestly, I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
I'm going to fill it, and I'm going to have you kind of stand over there and just make sure that when the fuel comes out, it goes into
I'm scared now. I want to make a mess.
Yeah. Did it come out yet?
No. Oh, there we go.
Out of the line?
Yeah.
Is it gross?
It looks pretty clear, actually.
Touch your finger to it and then smell it.
That smells like gasoline.
Smells like gas? Okay.
Actually, it smells like a mix of gas.
That's fine.
There's a little bit of like,
Got fresh gas going through,
yeah, it's got fresh gas.
so that's fine. So shut that back off.
That stinks.
Alright, we drained a little bit of gas just through to make sure anything that was gross in the line isn't going to go straight into the carburetor. Now we're going to hook the fuel line up. And one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the sediment bowl. Sediment bowl over here, it's a little glass jar type thing. It's essentially a really old style of fuel filter. As it comes down, all the heavy, like if there's rust or something in the tank, goes to the bottom of that first. So we're going to empty it out. Looks cloudy. Not as cloudy as it was a few minutes ago. But you loosen the little bottom of it. I believe they call it the bail. And of course it's stuck because it's been there a minute. It's glass, so you can't just knock it loose. There we go. And then usually there's a cork gasket, so I'm trying to be real careful about removing it. Yeah, something that resembles gas starting to leak out around the side. Okay, that is nasty. It pulled down everything with it.
I'm gonna step through the camera real quick.
Because my
Wow.
camera is awful, I can't really give you the close-up. But
Oh man.
we're going to set the bowl down. There's a little screen that goes in here, and it almost looks like gray mud.
That's gross.
It's a little screen, and real cloudy, not fuel. You can pour it on the ground, that's safe. That mud is all over the gasket and in the bottom. So it's just a can of carb clean. I mean, honestly, I've seen worse, but it definitely shouldn't be in there. Spraying that out. I wipe my hands off because I have so much of it on my hands. I spray it off the bowl and then I wipe it right back onto the bowl. And then I'm also going to turn the gas on just for a quick sec here. And yeah, we got clean fuel coming out, so that part looks just fine. Honestly, I'm not even putting the screen back in. I have to buy a new one of those. So right now I don't have the screen. I'll put it on the list, but it'll work for my testing here. Put it back up into there and tighten that bail screw again. Keeping in mind that it's glass, you can't just, you definitely don't want to go up here with vice grips or something to tighten that.
Man, that thing was so filthy. You can actually see in it now.
And turn the gas back on. Now there's a few things I could do about that. I could pull the tank and flush it, which I'm not doing unless I absolutely have to, because that means I have to pull the hood back off. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to run the tractor, and eventually it'll just kind of find its way through. There's already some more of that stuff settling in the sediment bowl. It at least looks like it's full of gas now, though. So, all in all, this is shaping up to be pretty good. We got good fuel flow. I bet if I touch that start button, it'd fire right up right now. I do have a tire I need to fix, but I do want to, before I go spend the money on that, I do want to make sure I have all the power I'm supposed to and that this thing is running right. So, I think what I'm going to do is just put what air I can get into the tire in and quickly take it for a ride around the yard. I need to adjust the governor a little bit because it does rev too high. just realized we had the audio off for that last part, but it drives. It drives good. I went through all the gears, checked the hydraulics were working on the rear lift arms. I remember last time it ran, like I said, years ago, at least 5 years ago, third gear was a no-go. You couldn't do it. If you tried to put in third gear, even once you were already moving with the RPMs all the way up, and actually the governor is even adjusted a little bit high right now, the tractor would just bog and stall right out. I was able to use third gear, not only after I used first and second, but I put it in third gear and then took off from a stop in third at like mid-throttle. So I definitely have the power back like it's supposed to have. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm pretty sure that the reason I didn't have it was those cylinder 2 and cylinder 3 spark plug wires. It's definitely much happier with those in place. It fires right up and idles real low. You operate the throttle, it revs right up. I believe it's ready to do work again. I do still have to do the tire, and I have to do a battery. I'm probably going to go get the tires either tonight or tomorrow. I don't know when I'm going to put it on, though, and I don't want to wait to show you the video for then. But it's a tire. I mean, the battery installation is pretty straightforward. It would be nice to have one that's not ratchet strapped to the side, of course. That's going to kind of be one of those do as I say, not as I do things. Don't strap a battery to your tie rods. But it worked for what I needed it for. And I'll get the tire and get that on. I'm not going to include it in the video, though. There's lots of videos about putting a tire or a battery in. So that concludes this video. Thanks for watching it, of course. If you liked it, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff out of this garage. It's not always tractors, lots of 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, occasional cars and stuff. If you want to comment something, if there's something you want to see me work on, let me know and I'll see if I can make that happen. Other than that, yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time.